All right, we're gonna do something a little bit different today. Sitting here on the table, I have 8 new single dynamic driver IEMs that I have not yet reviewed. And rather than doing 8 individual reviews, well, we're just gonna tackle them all at once and throw them up on this ranking chart. So I don't know, full disclosure, like there's new single dynamic driver IEMs that come out kind of every week. And frankly, a lot of them are actually really good. I feel like a single dynamic driver IEM is just like a good go-to to get like a pretty good sound. Like there's not many of them that sound bad. So why don't I review them? Well, I don't know. I guess they're just personally not that interesting. But there are always some diamonds in the rough and some nice surprises. And well, that's what we're going to find out today. Are there any nice surprises amongst these 9 IEMs? And I guess before we go to the rankings, I'll just kind of tell you which IEMs we're looking at in no particular order. This is just the order they appeared on my table. This is the Hidizs MK12 Turris over here. This is the Colorfly silver reference, which, okay, technically this one's actually a 3 dynamic driver. It's not a single dynamic driver, but it's just a dynamic driver. So I don't know, we can include it here. Over here, we've got the Tin Hifi T7. Here we've got the Tanchjim Fission. And here we've got the Tin Hifi C1, I believe is what the model is on this guy. We'll go through a little bit more detail on these individually as I rank them, but just to give you an overview of what we're looking at, this is the Ucotech RE-3 Pro. Here we've got the Twistura Woodnote. And then finally down here, we've got the Pula Unicrom, I believe. No, Unicrom. Sorry, it's not the COVID. It's not the variant of COVID. It's the Transformer. But anyway, yeah, I think what I was gonna do is just like, I've listened to these things before now, and I have like a rough idea in my head how to rank them. But I was actually thinking it would be cool to just sit down and actually listen to them a little bit longer and live rank them with you. Talk about what I'm hearing, why I want to rank it, where I want to rank it, and that'll be the video. But I guess to start, I actually wanted to put some things on the ranking list that I have reviewed before that I already know where they are, just to kind of like set the stage. Because again, single dynamic driver IEMs can kind of all be very good, but in kind of the same ways, but some of them do stand out in both good ways and bad ways. And to kind of set that stage again, let's just start with this, right? So this is the Sennheiser IE600, which I didn't talk about before, but this is an IEM I've had for years. One of my favorite IEMs of all time. And for me, as far as dynamic driver IEMs go, this is an S tier dynamic driver IEM. Super technical. It's got just a nice contrastiness about it, really incisive, fantastic imaging and depth. This is, to me, the pinnacle of dynamic driver IEMs. Over here, we've got the Moondrop Cadence, which came out about a year ago. And I honestly think this one's kind of slept on. For me, this is like an A tier IEM. It's not quite as impressive sounding as something like the Sennheiser IE600, but it is maybe a little bit more balanced in terms of its tonals. It's a little bit more mid-rangey, but also the bass is frankly really just nice and tactile. Here we've got the Moondrop Lawn, which is not as technical sounding as the Cadence, but it is also still very nice tonal balance for around 50 bucks. Frankly, this is just a really excellent little IEM. And then the final kind of benchmark IEM is, this is the, oh my gosh, what is the brand on this? I actually forget. Okay, it's the KN Fantasy. Not really very forgettable as an IEM because it is frankly one of the worst IEMs I've ever heard, unfortunately. So as far as dynamic drivers go, this is an example of how it goes bad. It can sound very contrasty and dynamic in the way a dynamic driver can, but it's just way too much treble and frankly not very much fun to listen to. So for me, that is an F tier IEM. But that still leaves us with these 8 new IEMs to rank. So let's do that. I have my DAP here. So I guess I can just kind of go through them one by one. I think I'll probably go through them in alphabetical order, just to, again, not imply anything in particular about them until I rank them, but I do want to tell you what I think about them. So let's start here with the Colorfly silver reference, which again, this is actually a cheater IEM here in that it is a 3 dynamic driver IEM. And as you can see, it is a very unique build, which is, it looks actually, I think, kind of cool, but it is very uncomfortable as far as IEMs go. The cable is quite thin and tangle prone. I don't believe this is a swappable termination, so it comes in 4.4. That's cool. But what else can I tell you about this thing? Oh, how about price? It comes in at a price of $150 and Shout out to Shenzhen Audio for sending in the Colorfly for review. Anything else to talk about before I listen to it? No. So let me go ahead and plug this into my ears and do a little bit of a listening test before I rank it. Although again, I have an idea of where this one goes. And already I can tell you, fit-wise, that is not great. It's a little bit uncomfortable because of these edges, as you might imagine. But also it just doesn't actually fit very well into the ear. Like this seal is quite tenuous. Maybe if I played around with ear tips more, I would find a better fit, but I don't know. And then as far as my listening test, I'm going to stick with just a handful of tracks from this playlist I have called 10 for Testing. If you're curious what kind of music I use for testing, I've actually got this playlist on my YouTube channel. Go to my YouTube channel, click on the playlist tab and look for 10 for Testing. And we're going to really lean heavily on Break for Lovers here. So I'll say right away that the treble is on the smooth side, which is not the case for all of these dynamic drivers. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit smooth, kind of easy sounding, the Colorfly does that. Apart from that, it's kind of not very standout. It's a little bit on the warm side. Imaging is a little on the narrow side. It's not super incisive. Resolution, because of that, perceived resolution is a little bit mediocre. It's fine. It's not bad. For 150 bucks, you can definitely do better if you want. But it's not awful. I think that's enough for now. And where do I rank this? The Colorfly Silver Reference. It's a fine IEM. It is not bad. If you asked me to listen to it for a long time, I would say, okay, sure. I wouldn't be super excited about listening to it though. Honestly, the biggest issue is the fit, but really I'm kind of just ranking the sound at this point. And I think for that, we'll start with it at C. We might revisit that later on, but it's kind of mid, I'll be honest. So next up, that will lead us alphabetically with the Hidizs, I believe. The Hidizs MK12 Turris. Also single dynamic driver. This one does come, just as a heads up, it comes with multiple different nozzles. I am listening to it here with the stock red nozzles, which in terms of frequency response look the most interesting to me. I don't know that it's necessarily my favorite, but it is the most interesting. So we're gonna rank the red nozzles. What else can I say about this one? I guess shout out to Hidizs for sending this one in, although it comes in via Duckbloke, so shout out to Duckbloke. I'll have his, if you're not watching Duckbloke, by the way, he does a lot of really interesting videos where he'll take an IEM like this, give his impressions of its stock, but then also play around with EQ and see how far he can get it. For this review, or this ranking, I'm just listening to it out of the box. But this one comes in at $200, and, well, let's listen to it. It's a single dynamic driver, as are all of them, except for the Colorfly, which again, apologize for the cheat. So let's check out the same track. This one's borderline dark, and it's pretty dark. So if you're worried about treble pain, discomfort, you're not going to get that with the Turris, but it's also, as I was describing the Colorflies being pretty unincisive and like the imaging not being very great, I feel like here with the Turris, that effect is even turned up more. Yeah, the treble is honestly a little bit on the muffled side, and it's pretty bassy. And I don't love the bass, I'll say that too. Yeah, I guess when I talk about bass, like I like bass. I like it to be tactile and tight and sharp and punchy. And this is just a little bit on the thuddy side for me. Okay, that's probably enough. Let's rank the Turris. Where does the MK12 Turris go on this? It's not uncomfortable to listen to, right? In the way that the Can Fantasy is. That for me is a fail of an IEM. The Turris, it's fine, but I think I'm gonna leave this here at a D rank. Again, we might revisit this later on, but to me the Turris is, it's pretty mid. But I guess that will move us on to the Pula Unicrom, not the Omicron. Again, not the COVID. But what can I tell you about the Pula Unicrom? Hold on, let me find the IEM sitting here on my table. I'll pull it out so you can take a look at it up close. This one's in via Hi-Fi Go. Shout out to Hi-Fi Go for sending it in. Price on this, actually, hold on, let me look this up. I have to look this up in real time because I did not prepare this, or I just didn't know it when I was putting my notes together. 80 bucks, okay. $80, single dynamic driver IEM, and there's not much else to say about it apart from the fact that it comes in shells like these. It does come in different colors. The yellow looks kind of cool and stand out. That's what I have here on my chart, but it also does come in this handsome looking black. So let me go and throw this into my ears, give it a little listen with my same test tracks, and frankly, yeah, I think we're probably just going to stick with Break for Lovers if y'all don't mind. I certainly don't, and away we go. So right away, this is kind of more contrasty, more punchy and dynamic sounding versus like the Turris and even the Colorfly. It's more incisive in the treble, maybe a little bit too much, maybe a little bit just on the edge of splashy. The treble is a little bit on the edgy side. In fact, yeah, the vocal here is a little bit on the sibilant side, but it does have much more of like a high resolution sound versus the Colorfly and especially the Turris. It's dynamic, I'll give it that. That treble is going to be, it's going to be an issue for me. It's going to be a limiting factor. Fits fine. I guess I'll show you what that looks like. I didn't show you what the Turris looked like in my ear. The Turris fits okay. The Turris actually, the fit reminds me a little bit of the 7 Hz Sound Notes Dioko. If anyone's tried that, it just feels like a giant tube kind of fitting into your ear concha. The Pula Unicrom, I think I'm ready to rank this one. This is not a bad IEM. Well, man, that treble is honestly going to be kind of a limiting factor because apart from the treble being a little bit too sharp, a little bit on the sibilant side, there is kind of a satisfying punch to this IEM. I would even maybe describe this as like borderline bassy, but not like aggressively bassy. It's got a nice satisfying punch to it. It does sound high resolution. It does sound well defined, but that treble is kind of a limit. I think for this ranking, oof. Would I rather listen to this or the Colorfly? I mean, I think the Pula is, again, more engaging than the Colorfly, but I do think that treble is kind of a limiting factor. So we're gonna leave that down here in D tier for now. But that will let us move on to the Tanchjim Fission, which, let me pull up, is this IEM here. The Tanchjim Fission, also single dynamic driver IEM, also in from Hi-Fi Go. Shout out to Hi-Fi Go. Price on this one is $130 US. And I guess one note on this is that it does have these little tuning dial on the inside of it. You kind of will need like a small screwdriver or something to operate it. Might even come with one. But it basically has 4 different levels of bass. What's interesting is that all of the bass levels on this thing are pretty weak. Like the stock sound signature is like a decent level bass, but then you can just like roll it off if you want to. And like, I don't think anyone really ever wants to do that. So I feel like the adjustments on it are a little bit of a waste of time personally, but let me give it a listen here, and I will be listening to it in its stock bass max configuration, which is, again, it's like a modest level of bass. So back to Break for Lovers. Okay, the Fission. What can I say about this thing? It's fairly inoffensive in terms of its sound. Like it has that dynamic driver contrastiness about it. It's got a little bit of a dynamic punch to it. It's not the tightest, I will say, versus like the Unicrom that I was just listening to. The Unicrom sounds higher def and like more incisive and punchy in a way that's kind of engaging. But again, in the Unicrom, the treble just kind of crosses the line for me and makes it a little bit uncomfortable. The Tanchjim never does that. There's no issues with this treble being uncomfortable. It is maybe slightly on like the brighter forward side in terms of its sound signature, but I don't think that the treble is going to be an irritant for people in the way that the Unicrom might be. But also it's just kind of, it's fine. I would say that the bass is a little bit on the pillowy side in terms of its attack. And just overall, it's just not super engaging, but again, it's not bad. So the Unicrom, for me, in terms of this ranking, if Kane Fantasy is an F, and then these two down here are a D, I think it's better than those. And I might even like it a little bit more than the Colorfly, but we only have so many places to rank it. So I feel like they have similar issues, right? They're both like fine, but also not that engaging sounding. And that's, I guess, kind of what the C rank is shaping up to be. But where does that leave us with this? This is the Tin Hifi C0, which I have got sitting right here. And this is the cheapest IEM of the bunch by far. Hold on. Price is $30 US. This one was sent in by Tin Hifi. Shout out Tin Hifi. So yeah, let me give it a little bit of a listen here with my test tracks. I'll tell you where this one lands. Okay, so the C0 is definitely on the V shape in terms of sound signature. Frankly, kind of all these are. I have in my notes, I noted that it was a little bit on the warm side and a little bit dark, and I do hear that. It does sound a little bit rolled in the treble, I suppose, and a little bit low resolution because of that. But interestingly, I guess in comparison to what I was just listening to, it doesn't really sound especially warm and thick. It's just, I guess it's a little over bassy. But you know, if you're shopping for a $30 IEM, maybe that's what you're looking for. I think it's not particularly aggressive, but also this does sound pretty low res. It sounds like a $30 IEM, which frankly doesn't mean much because there are some $30 IEMs that sound better than a $30 IEM, but this sounds like, you know, about what you should expect. I'll say that in terms of like the build and stuff, this has got a little bit of that gumball machine aesthetic, which is, yeah, it's fine. I don't know. How do we rank this guy? Tin Hifi C0. It's inoffensive, but I would say I like it less than these, whereas these have some redeeming values, but are a little bit on the offensive side. This is like inoffensive, but also less redeeming. So I think I'm gonna leave this one down here in D tier. It's not awful, but Tin Hifi C0. C0, or is it the C1? I can't remember. I think it's the C1. Yeah, not my favorite of the IEMs here. But how is this other Tin Hifi? So this is the Tin Hifi T7, also sent in by Tin Hifi. They actually sent these two IEMs in at the exact same time. It was kind of interesting because they're both single dynamic drivers, but this one's 30 bucks and this one is 200 US dollars for also a single dynamic driver. And I'll say that frequency response wise, they are not that different, but do they sound that different? Well, let's do a little bit of a listening impression. So right away, it's a lot more V and a lot more dynamic sounding. It sounds punchy, incisive. The bass is, whoa, that is a hard-hitting bass. It's too much for me personally. Vocals borderline sibilant. Yeah, it's too contrasty for me, but I could see someone actually liking this IEM because it is very aggressive and assertive in its execution. Like, it is interesting to look at the frequency response of this versus the C1 or whatever it was that I looked at before, because they're similar, but they sound pretty different. This sounds a lot more Okay. I think I'm done. You know, this is not bad. It's kind of engaging in a way. It's also a little bit fatiguing. The treble, I would say, is not actually particular. It's interesting. Yeah, I noted earlier that I found the treble pretty sharp. I'll say it's not the safest of treble executions, but I also don't feel like this was creating like the sense of sibilance that I was getting here on the Pula. And it is, you know, it's pretty dynamic and aggressive and fun in that sense. So again, I think some people might like this. For me, that's probably just still not going to make it above C tier. But yeah, I think we'll leave the Tin Hifi T7 at C tier, which is leaving us here with the Twistura. So this one's hard for me to say, so I apologize if I bungle it. But the Twistura Woodnote, and I believe it's called the Woodnote because the dynamic driver is actually made out of, or at least they say that it's made out of wood, which is interesting. This one was sent in actually by Linsol. Shout out to Linsol for sending in the Woodnote. Price on this is on the higher end of the bunch. It is $180, but also like the others, it is a single dynamic driver. And I will say, I think this has the nicest cable of the bunch. I like this cable that comes here on the Woodnote. I also think the earpieces are kind of interesting. Hold on. Figure out how to get this thing into my ear. I'll punch it and show you. These things actually fit kind of nice. I like the way that this IEM fits. The build quality, physical form factor on the Twistura, not bad. Although I will say, this chin slider does not function, so I actually put some hot glue inside of it to hold it in place. Things you got to do. But anyway, let's give it the old listening test, a little break for lovers, and see where we land. I'm not surprised because, again, I have listened to these before, but like immediately, this to me is better than the rest. What's interesting is the frequency response. I would not guess that this would be my favorite of the bunch, but it is. It is nonetheless, of the 8 IEMs, and that's, I guess, the spoiler for the one that we haven't looked at yet, but I do like this one better than this one. It's still very much V-shaped, bit of emphasis on kind of like the lower treble, vocal forward sort of presence region area, but it's got nice imaging. I think it's overall balanced, and while it is forward and still V in its tonality, I don't hear it to be sharp or sibilant. A little bit too contrasty, sure. It's not as tight as something like the Moondrop Cadence, but it's nice. Like, imaging is good. Decent head stage. Not the most incisive IEM that I've heard today. The Cadence, I would say, is more incisive, more technical in that sense, both in the bass and the treble. But this is an IEM I'd be happy to listen to kind of all day. Yeah, that's probably enough listening here. So for the Twistura Woodnote, where should we rank this one? I think Well, it's going to be better than these other ones. I've kind of already told you that. Definitely not F tier. It's definitely better than D tier. I think it's better than the T7 and the Fission and the Colorfly. Is it better than the Moondrop Lawn? I think the tonal balance of the Lawn is better. I think the Twistura is a little bit more exciting and engaging and like technical, I suppose. They're honestly kind of similar in that regard. This would just be more, are you looking for like kind of a more dynamic, lively sound, which would be the Twistura, or do you want something a little bit more neutral and reserved, which would be the Lawn? But I think that these things are both like nice B tier IEMs. I don't think these reach into the A tier or the S tier, but the Twistura Woodnote, that's not bad. That's definitely not a bad IEM. But that will leave us with one other IEM, which is this, the Ucotech RE-3 Pro. And I'll be honest, like I was not that familiar with this one until Bloom Audio reached out and asked if I would be interested in reviewing this. This comes in at $155 US. Again, shout out to Bloom Audio for sending it in for review. And when I was looking this one up, I had previously actually bought the Ucotech RE2 because there was a little bit of hype about that one on HeadFi. I didn't end up loving the RE2, but I was interested in a new Ucotech, and there was a RE3, and I didn't realize this is actually the RE3 Pro. So this is like a follow-up to the RE3, which is a follow-up to the RE2, which is a whole lot of me talking about the IEM and not actually listening to it. So let me go ahead and throw it in my ear and give you my impressions. Although, I'm gonna tell you now that the graph tells a story here that, well, we'll talk about it. Okay. Yeah, so it's interesting. In this comparison, like the tonal balance in the RE3 Pro, I don't know exactly how this differs from the original RE3, but the tonal balance is not bad. It is like the others, a little bit on the contrasty kind of V-shaped sound signature side. It's not too contrasty though. I think it does have a little bit more of like kind of a vocal forwardness to it. I did not find the treble to be edgy or sharp or sibilant or anything like that. It's not maybe the most incisive sound, but it does nonetheless present a little bit more like head stagey. Like it presents a little bit wider than you might expect, given the frequency response looks kind of ordinary. And it is, again, it's like another single dynamic driver. The one issue I have with this, okay, I'll say this, the bass is like not the tightest and punchiest, which is fine. It's not my biggest priority. I don't mind the tonal balance in this IEM. But I do have an issue with this, which I think we can highlight here in the frequency response graph. And hold on, let me turn off this overlay so you're not looking at that. Not that overlay, this overlay. Let me pull this up real quick. So I'm gonna pull up my frequency response graph of the Ucotech RE-3 Pro. And well, you can see that there is a bit of a, kind of a lower treble emphasis, which is interesting because I don't hear it as like particularly sharp or edgy in the vocals, but it does come across a little bit more forward than you might expect. There's also a little bit more bass down low than you would get on some of these others. So I think they're working to balance each other out. So you do get kind of a balanced sound. The biggest issue I have with the sound signature, in fact, now I want to turn my overlay back on, is this channel imbalance. And now I get a number, like I've reviewed hundreds of IEMs at this point, right? I get in a number of IEMs every year. And every once in a while I'll get something that has an issue with it. And usually I'll reach out to the manufacturer or the retailer that sent it to me, and I'll say, hey, it's got a channel imbalance. And sometimes it's audible, sometimes it's not. If it's not audible, I kind of don't even really care. If it is audible, I'll let them know, and usually I'll get a replacement and review it. This one, however, I am not getting a replacement for because I mentioned I'd previously bought the Ucotech RE2. Oh, and I guess I will say this channel imbalance is audible, okay? So while I'm listening to this and kind of enjoying its tonal balance, to be honest, it's fine. It's not fantastic, but it's kind of pleasant. There is a distinct lack of bass in the left side, which is kind of a bummer. Oh, it's not, maybe a lack of bass is overstating it, but it sounds imbalanced. Like it sounds like the audio is kind of like leaning over, and it makes it just kind of uncomfortable to listen to. Again, this is like not, I don't think how the IEM is designed to sound, and I don't usually try to judge IEMs based on like a fluke or a flap, but I was getting at why this one might be a little bit more than a fluke or a flop. So this is my measurement of the RE-3 Pro that I got. Here's my measurement of the Ucotech RE2 that I got. Also severely channel imbalanced, to the point like this is very audible. Again, these channel imbalances aren't always audible or noticeable, and if they're not, I usually don't even really care about it. This is very audible. This is just like, I can't listen to this IEM. But you also might notice this is sampled too, because this is not the first one I got. This was the replacement for sample 1, which was this, which was also severely channel imbalanced. And you might have noticed that the bass between these two samples didn't even line up. Let me show you all 4 samples of basically left and right for these 2 different models of the Ucotech RE. Basically, we have 3 levels of bass that I've measured with this one IEM, and we're getting kind of a similar level of imbalance here with the RE-3 Pro, which is to say, like, I really don't mean to harp on what looks like a QC issue, but the fact that I've tested 3 of this company's IEMs ever, and all 3 of them have pretty severe audible channel imbalances, mean that for me, as you know, moderately pleasant as this is to listen to, when it comes to the ranking, well, you can probably see where this one's going. I can't recommend the Ucotech RE-3 Pro. I don't know, maybe the RE-3 is a little better, but there you go. That is my ranking here of these 8 IEMs. Let me bring the fingers back so I can point. Up here again, an S tier for me, Sennheiser IE600, my favorite dynamic driver IEM. Just barely behind it, honestly, is the Moondrop Cadence. Frankly, a fantastic set. And then, you know, and just a nice all-rounder, the Moondrop Lawn. And while I don't think that the Twistura Woodnote is the same kind of level of like all-arounder sound, it's a little bit more V-shaped, a little bit more exciting. It's pretty pleasant. This kind of reminds me of, okay, it's not exactly like the Tanchjim Hana 2021, which was, I think, maybe more balanced and more classically warm V-shaped sound signature, but it's kind of like a brighter, livelier version of that. And I dig that. And then down here, these are fine IEMs. The C's, like the Colorfly, Silver Reference, it's fine. The Tanchjim Fission, it's fine. Actually has a really nice cable, by the way. The Tin Hifi T7, it's kind of exciting and engaging, but it's also a little bit much for me. I feel that trouble being an issue eventually. And then down here, the Hidizs MK12 Turris, I don't really care for it. It's too warm, too bassy, too thick, kind of muddy for me. The Pula is actually kind of exciting and again, like nice and incisive, but that treble is over the edge for me. It's a little bit on the sibilant side. The Tin Hifi C1, this is a $30 IEM and is exactly what you should expect from a $30 IEM. The Kane Fantasy, an $800 IEM, exactly what you should not expect from an $800 IEM. And the Ucotech RE-3, it sounded, again, kind of fine, apart from the fact that it was heavily imbalanced in my ear. So there you go. That is 8 new dynamic driver IEMs ranked. I don't know, what'd you guys think? Is this like a format you would be interested in seeing me do more often? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, while you're down there, if you haven't already, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, join me on Discord, also linked in the description. And I'll catch you in the next super review. Cheers.
Join with the force of reviews, we now have the tools to brave the misleading world of audio fools. Hey, this review is super, and so are you. Grab your headphones, sniff a graph, and share your thoughts in this pursuit. Let's get into the fish.